Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, June 5th, 2025. Time to get rolling once again. Not that the computer was cooperating. I missed my cues, and I'm like 3 seconds behind. So I think we have to do this very quickly so that we make up for lost time. And I guess that's probably it. We're caught up now. And no big deal. Greg Dworkin standing by. He was ready and on time and everything. And we chatted a little bit, and then I had to run and go grab up all the materials that I like at my side when we do the show. I don't use any of the materials, but I have them around, and that gives me confidence to go forward. So much to catch up on. And we're back in travel ban territory. Greg will tell us a little bit more about that, but that was a nice overnight development. I guess the old man woke up and decided to do the greatest hits thing. And interestingly, I have seen a little bit of reaction to it. But, I mean, this is something he announced, as I recall it, because this is the way it came to me, basically like during dinner. So I'm sitting down eating some dinner and afterwards scanning some headlines, and there's a new travel ban. Now, he said it was in response to the attack in Boulder, Colorado, which we told you yesterday, and it does seem to have become the prevailing conventional wisdom in at least left-leaning reporting and truthy, reporting about this thing that they've very quickly converted this into an immigration case. That seems to be obvious. I connect it with the administration having transferred everybody in counterterrorism, not only away from looking for the possibilities of domestic terrorism, but transferring them away to immigration enforcement instead. And the only way that they can look like they're on top of things with an attack like this, and nobody can ever, predict these weird wild card things. Sometimes they get lucky, whatever, but they can't respond to it as a counterterrorism thing because it looks like they're not doing anything, because it takes a long time to investigate things and figure stuff out and present the case. So they immediately jump on it as an immigration case so they can look like they're taking action. And yet, though, the 12 countries, I think, were listed in the travel ban, none of them have anything to do with the countries of origin of the attacker, their family, whomever. It seems more or less entirely random, but I have noticed that people who are upset about it have had within an hour or so of the announcement of this ban. And again, this is like everything else. Let's see the paperwork first. Do they do this thing? He says he's doing it. He purports that there's a travel ban. He could be reversed by the courts, or he could taco right the hell out of it at some later date. But people were reporting that this was put into place, and they were upset and saying, the first time there was a travel ban, people went to the airports and protested and just tried to escort people through, and lawyers showed up, and this time nothing. But it had been about 15 minutes since the announcement of the travel ban. So I'm not certain whether we're not going to see any reaction yet. I mean, on the other hand, people might say, that was successful last time, and perhaps we should start heading to the airports. But no one has flown in yet since the travel ban, and it hasn't started yet either. So, all right. Well, as we mentioned, Greg Dworkin is here and standing by with news of the day. And I'll tell you what, Greg, I have somewhere here in my email another user submitted, but listener submitted a fanfare to try out for you. I think it's a little off of your usual fare, but I think you'll agree that it's subtle and understated. Frank Kite has sent us this very understated piece. What do you think? I think Now, I have to tell you, this goes on for some time.
I would think. The bottom's falling out.
Yeah, and so at any point during the report, if the organ just starts again, don't worry about it. Eventually, it'll come around. It's like a 4-minute long.
Right.
It's an immense piece.
It only stops if you put a quarter in.
Yeah, I mean, I have to put.
It's not that it starts if you put it. You have to put money in to stop it.
It's really something, and I should just take the last second or two of the last flourish at the end is really great.
That's work.
That is something. So
have your sound engineer do it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I can ask him to do that. And I just figured also while you're reporting stories, I could, accidentally hit the button and then it continues on.
Well, it's a good segue into something I'll mention. I wasn't going to do this one, but you did. So
okay.
This is from ProPublica, one of those news organizations that actually reports the truth.
Oh, I know those guys.
A rare thing. The intern in charge.
Oh, yeah.
Meet the 22-year-old Trump team picked to lead terrorism prevention. His name is Frank Fugate.
Okay.
F-U-G-A-T-E. Hell of a job, Fugate here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is the Department of Homeland Security official tasked with overseeing the government's main hub for combating extremism. In other words, you pulled off everybody to go find Carol in Missouri, which we'll talk about, leaving this 22-year-old in charge of making sure the country's safe.
Yeah, like the Coalition Provisional Authority.
That's not what I voted for, Colin.
Yeah, I did. I saw that piece, and in particular, I noted in that piece that they did specifically say, well, they've reassigned everybody from counterterrorism to immigration, so they were flat-footed for a terrorist attack.
Right. So Fugate's experience is that he was a former Trump campaign worker, and he also interned at the Hard Right Heritage Foundation.
That was it. He's 22.
So now he's qualified.
Yeah. It's really remarkable, and like I was saying, that it makes the Coalition Provisional Authority kids look like some sort of council of elders. They really had their act, a Mensa meeting, if you will.
Right. Typically, a candidate that green wouldn't have gotten an interview for a junior position, much less be hired to run operations. According to LinkedIn, the bulk of Fugate's leadership experience comes from having served as Secretary General of a model UN club.
Well, it's tough to win that election. That's top notch for the club.
Hey, maybe he's Doogie Howser, said one counterterrorism researcher. But sounds like putting the intern in charge.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job of filling in the blanks. They subtly weave the possibility of the true story of how he arose to it into the narrative, but it's still a shocker that he's there at all. But it's starting to sound like he was brought in a junior position in something that was related to Department of Homeland Security work, but not this, and then the dodgy guys wrecked this bureau, this department, this subsection, and then they transferred this wrecked section to this, to Homeland Security, and this guy was just sitting there, and they were like, well, we're wrecking the thing, and we fired all the agents, so I guess it's okay if we leave this 22-year-old in charge. It's not like they made him national security
That's one of the
advisor,
two main theories.
Yeah.
In these circles, two main theories, says the report from ProPublica, have emerged to explain Fugate's unusual ascent. One is the Trump administration rewarded a Gen Z campaign worker with a resume-boosting title that comes with little power because the office is in shambles. That's what you just said. The other is that the White House installed Fugate to oversee a pivot away from traditional counterterrorism and steer resources toward MAGA-friendly sheriffs. Before eventually shuttering operations. In this scenario, Fugate was described as a babysitter. Yeah, so he's just there.
He's not supposed to be making...
he leads in name only. We've seen that like in Doge.
Yeah.
The lady who runs Doge, you probably don't even know her name.
Even
though she keeps showing up in court saying, are you really running? Oh, yes, I am. Well, why? You don't even know your own name.
Amber.
April May. That's her name, right? April May?
It may be. I don't know. Yeah, I've already forgotten. But yeah, she was supposed to be doing the cover story the whole time. No, not Elon Musk. Me.
So whoever me is. So what I wanted to start today off with.
You want a fanfare?
No,
no,
please.
Okay.
I like fanfares. Yeah, if they're short.
All right. Well, no. This one is still 4 minutes long. Pipe organ masterwork.
Might as well do Toccata and Fugue in D minor if you're going to do that.
Everyone loves a fugue.
Yeah, everybody loves Fantasia. So this is from Nanos Research in Canada.
Oh, Nanos. I never
Nanos.
heard of them. Okay.
Right?
But they're Canadian.
Nanu polling by Mork.
Right.
From Planet
Fly,
Earth.
be free.
So this is looking at the prime minister, the preferred prime minister, both before and after the election. And I think it's fascinating. And I come to different conclusions, perhaps, than other people do when I see this. On May 2nd, 2025, Mark Carney, the winner, the Liberal, had 47% support.
Okay.
And the Conservative, Pierre Poilievre,
or something like that. We don't have to learn anymore. Polyev, I think he said we should call him, but okay.
Poly forever, was 41%.
Yeah.
47-41.
All right.
Now,
losing,
May 30th,
okay. Yeah.
47% Mark Carney hasn't budged one bit.
Well, he won.
Pierre Poilievre,
yeah, maybe.
28.
Well,
he dropped 13 points.
But no one has to vote for him.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's interesting.
Well, what does it mean?
Like, why abandon him?
And my theory of the case is simply,
I guess
many people who tell pollsters that they support something only do so because they perceive it as the winning side.
Yes.
And once you lose, screw you, get out of here. I want somebody else. I say that in regard to Trump. Don't read Trump support, still underwater, by the way, as Trump support per se. Should he lose or had he lost,
he should lose.
30 points vanishes.
That is.
I only am voting for him because he's a winner. If he's not a winner, who needs him? He's a jerk.
Maybe.
Everybody knows he's a jerk. He just happens to be our jerk. But if he's not going to win, what's the point?
Yeah. It's interesting that they even did the poll, but that's a good idea.
And you don't usually do the poll. That's what I found so fascinating.
Who pays for the polls up there? I mean, is that an academic poll?
Mexico.
Maybe. Because it would be difficult to get, a private polling organization unless somebody just up and pays them to agree, I would think, to put the resources into polling an election that's over. But it makes a good point. We usually don't look. And I mean, it doesn't do anything for us here. Like, okay, well, then Trump isn't president. Well, no, he is. We're stuck with that. But yeah, we very frequently do say, the difference in a close election is often a very small number of votes, but then we pretend that the winner had some great insight into the soul of the American people
and a
mandate, and this was a brilliant campaign strategy when really what happened was
and decided by soccer moms. I mean, what I'm saying is the whole narrative is bullshit.
Yeah, you are saying that, and I think it usually is true, and it's a good reminder. But this is a different angle on the reminder. The guy who had a few votes gone the other way is now, polling at 20%, could have been A, Prime Minister of Canada, and B, probably then polling at least, 48, 49%, if not majority support.
Exactly right. So it's behind a paywall and I can't read it, but I will read you the blurb that they give you. So you don't have to pay for it.
There's a tariff.
Why don't you just subscribe for it and read it? Because there's 172 other, and I wish I were exaggerating, other things that I'm subscribed to.
Yeah.
What's the opposite of a honeymoon? This week's update from Nanos Research Tracker, so it's a tracker, suggests that Pierre Poilievre standing with Canadians is on the decline while Prime Minister Mark Carney continues to benefit from a post-election honeymoon. All right. So Poilievre has the opposite of a honeymoon.
I guess so. Yeah, right. I don't know what.
And he's been dropping ever since the election. 28% of respondents now, 34% a week ago. Remember, it's a tracker. And 13 points below the 41% he posted at election time.
Okay. Well, losing will do that to you, but
losing will do that to you.
We forget to illustrate it. And
it's a reflex, not so much among the reporters. They sort of may have a unconscious bias toward reporting the winner as if somehow they deserve the position. But their publishers are really putting the screws on the reporters to prop up Trump because for various and sundry reasons, and probably the flagship example of this kind of corruption is CBS.
Yeah, I guess so.
They want a merger.
I can see what
and
you mean.
So they're going to whitewash and sane-wash everything Trump does because they want that merger.
Slightly different phenomenon, but it's also a good reminder, as we had to tell people for years, no, the Supreme Court are political actors. They say they're not. You learn that they're not, but they are. And I guess
of course they are.
Reporters and newspapers, subject to the business environment and business pressures, and they should be at some level. But sometimes it works against our
vacations are expensive, right? So,
Yes.
Supreme Court has to do what it does. Ask Clarence
Well,
Thomas.
yeah, right. You just get someone else to pay for it. Find yourself a billionaire who likes you.
Yeah, who'll give you a
sponsor
fancy
your vacation
RV and let you drive around in it.
Or not. I used to like RVs until I found out I could use a super yacht. Then I went that direction instead.
Well, I drive my RV on the super yacht. It's so big that it takes me a day to get to the other side.
That's why you need those bigger yachts to carry all that stuff.
So this is a story that I'm happy to say we covered the other day.
Yes.
Her name is Carol.
Okay. Oh, yes.
She lives in Kennett, Missouri.
I remember that.
I don't know that we specifically did all the quotes from the New York Times story that first told us about her.
Got a couple of them in there.
Carol didn't show up for her shift at John's Waffle and Pancake House. People got really worried because, she's super reliable. She arrived there from Hong Kong 20 years ago. And everybody knows Carol, said Lisa Dry, a Kennett City councilwoman. Mm-hmm. But, she got arrested and jailed awaiting deportation. And the way the Times puts it, this detention has forced a rural Missouri county to face the fallout of President Trump's immigration crackdown, which was supported in theory by many residents in this Trump-loving corner of an increasingly red America, increasingly red meaning he won the election. Not that there's data to show that everybody's are increasing red. That's what I said. You win, and all of a sudden, you're a genius, you lose, and you lose 13 points. Many are now asking how you can support Carol and also Mr. Trump at the same time. I voted for Donald Trump, and so did practically everyone here, said Vanessa Coward. I think we read this one the other day. Mm-hmm. But nobody voted to deport moms. We were all under the impression we were just getting rid of the gangs, the people who came here in droves. This is Carol. Well, is that going to make you change your mind? You said probably not the other day, but here's a guy who just flat out says no.
Okay.
Adam Squires, a one-time candidate for mayor, doesn't bear any ill will toward Carol, but he was just glad to see the deportation campaign reach home. They vote for Trump and then they get mad because stuff happens,
Yeah.
Not
that
what's
guy.
wrong with them? They voted for him. This is what you're supposed to happen.
Yeah, well, at least one guy. I don't know whether we
got to get rid of all the illegals, even if it's your neighbors.
For being consistent, or do I? Well, I hate you all the time, both before and after you clarified.
Right.
But okay, true, and that too is interesting. It goes in the same bin as, well, we didn't vote for this. Yes, you did. He said, I bear no ill will towards Carol. Yeah, you do. Well, I mean, I don't know. I like her personally, but she should be locked up. Well, that's ill will.
Right. So do you know what the crime was that she did that they picked her up for?
I would imagine a waffle or pancake related crime.
Yeah, I mean, she got the order wrong.
Yeah.
What happened is that when she was a kid and she got here 20 years ago, she arranged a fake marriage trying to get citizenship.
Well, nothing bothers Trump like a fake marriage.
And court papers show she has no criminal record, but that doesn't matter.
So what was her name again? Melania?
What's that?
What was the woman's name? Melania? Was that right?
Yeah.
Oh, Carol.
Well,
okay.
So
she
arranged a fake marriage. Are not allowed to work. Her tourist visa lapsed. She was working. Therefore, they picked her up and tried to deport her.
That is bizarre, because I think Melania arrived on a tourist visa and started modeling and then arranged a fake marriage about 20 years ago.
Remember, small town, bosses at the Waffle House held a Carol Day fundraiser, brought in $20,000. This is the story that people were reading. So then she's arrested. It becomes national. We talked about that the other day. We talked about that in terms of the worst people in the world lived in this town, and that guy who ran for mayor is a perfect example.
Yes,
and it turns out, Greg Sargent tweeted last night, Ming Lee, known as Carol Hui, has been released from prison by ICE. Her lawyer confirms to me she's headed home to the Missouri town where she's lived for 20 years. She still could face deportation, so the battle continues. And so when we were talking about it last night,
right,
David and I actually do speak now and again. Believe it or not, we actually are friends. It's not just like fake news for this podcast.
Even though I play organ,
the question on the table is that going to change anybody's mind in Missouri, or are they going to say, you see, we were right to back Trump because look, he did the right thing. But she's still subject to deportation.
Yes.
And this still happened. And it still proves the point that he's not just arresting gang members. And what do you do with that information? And again, I go back to that Canadian poll.
Tough for
when
people.
You win, you overlook it. And if he lost, you'd say, well, see, I can't possibly support a guy like this.
I have a feeling then that the people down there will say, like, first, you guys said we were wrong to support Trump, that we were the worst people in the world. And we said we didn't vote for this. We voted for deporting gang members. We didn't vote for this. And you said, no, you did vote for that. But then he's such a good guy. He let her out just like we asked. So really, we were right and you were wrong for saying we were wrong.
Meanwhile, Stephen Miller is screaming at the FBI and his 22-year-old intern saying, what are you wasting your time with counterterrorism for? You're supposed to be at Home Depot looking for people.
Right. He wants roundups.
He literally
of day workers. That. Yeah. I saw that floating around. Yeah. You should be at Home Depot. You should be at 7-Eleven. This is interesting. Like, I'm a counterterrorism guy. I should be at 7-Eleven? No, not at all. But he's talking about when I go to a place and there's Hispanic people, I can't take it. You got to get rid of them. Sometimes they're customers even, or standing around. Sure, they're looking for work, honest labor and all that to contribute to society. But they're in my way when I go in and out the door, and I have to look at them, and they're brown. And I said we were going to get rid of them. What's happening here? Good old Stephen Miller.
So here's another example of how when the mob boss speaks, the minions rush to do stuff. This is a story in the Atlantic from Isaac Stanley Becker based on getting information and documents.
Okay. That's a good way.
And the title is, the Trump administration is spending $2 million to figure out whether DEI causes plane crashes. The president may be disappointed by the findings.
I don't know.
So this was driven by Musk. And Alex Spiro is the lawyer, Musk's lawyer. The investigation by Spiro, a partner at the elite firm Quinn, Emanuel, Urquhart, and Sullivan and Hungadunga, is due to conclude soon. Hungadunga, and McCormick. Don't leave out a Hungadunga.
All right.
I've heard that Groucho Marx reference for those. A person familiar with the dynamics told me, speaking on the condition of anonymity because of the confidentiality of the work, contrary to what Trump may hope, it's not expected to find programs aimed at ensuring representation are responsible for this year's string of aviation disasters.
Oh, too bad.
Including the January crash at Reagan Airport, which killed 67 people. That determination hardly required a multi-million-dollar probe.
But, we had the money.
Right.
So, use it.
Now,
wow.
Another controller put it more bluntly, waste of money. The controller pointed out the severe strains of the workforce following a series of disturbing incidents. That's $2 million that could have gone toward pain and suffering raises for controllers. The scope of work document outlines exactly what the money's buying. Interviews with 10 to 15 key stakeholders are estimated to cost as much as $150,000, including preparation and documentation of findings. Statistical analysis, another $100,000. Examination of data by expert statistician. Finally, the cost of legal analysis, $1,800,000. Apparently, according to the lawyers, the lawyer fees are much more deserving of money than statistical analysis.
Right.
as well as legal memorandum preparation. The lawyers only got $1, but they charged $1,799,000 for legal memorandum preparation.
We haven't reached this stage of it yet because this has only just come out. But I guess once we get a hold of whatever report, I guess good time for making a small wager on this one. I guess maybe you can do it on the online betting sites already. The $1.8 million that we spent on the report preparation, probably written by AI, and we're going to find out that it was garbage and cites things that don't exist, but $1.8 million nonetheless.
Yeah.
So
Senator McMurphy McDougal was behind all of this, right?
Yeah,
that's
right.
What, they just make up names. They make up
apparently,
stuff.
Right? That's the latest hot story is the hallucinations of AI. But okay,
the scope of work document was addressed to Pete Meacham, the chief of staff at Department of Transportation, former congressional aide to Sean Duffy.
Dear Pete.
A Wisconsin Republican, Duffy left Congress in 2019 to work as a lobbyist and a Fox Business co-host, one of the Fox Business people, one of the Fox people who's now transportation secretary, so cabinet member. A day later, he signed what the department called a woke rescission memo.
All right. Sure.
And that was the same day American Airlines Flight 5342 collided with a U.S. Army helicopter. In a Fox interview, Duffy seemed to endorse the president's comments. You can't focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion when you try to hire air traffic controllers. You focus on the best and the brightest. And the best and the brightest have been working long hours under stressful conditions, and that led to a lot of this.
Right.
So this was confidential work product stuff that nobody was supposed to see, but a complete waste of money.
Well, yeah, I guess that's how you keep it under wraps.
But, it really didn't waste money because when the lawyers come up with a conclusion Trump won't like, he simply won't pay him.
Yeah, that's possible, too. Yeah, and so they are going to definitely give him a report that he wants. That's interesting. But you would think. So either the check cleared or these guys are idiots. Yeah. I don't know which one it is.
I'd love to work for you. Pay me in advance.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the smart thing to do. I can't believe that they reached the opposite conclusion. You're fired. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So I guess I just spit this out because I had a thought and I didn't want to lose it.
Spit it out. This is clean up on aisle 5 section
right.
of the broadcast.
On our way out, as we were discussing the air traffic control stuff and the fact that the lawyers, ordinarily you would have guessed, well, no, they're going to conclude that DEI did cause the crash because otherwise they won't get paid. So it's either the check cleared right away and they got paid, so they actually just gave them the good conclusion, or they're idiots and they don't understand how Trump works and then they're not going to get the money. And even if the check clears, it's a government check and Trump could very well start saying, well, I want to claw back that money somehow because this bogus report didn't do the right thing. But it reminded me also that the story, Carol's story down in Missouri, if you're the first round of stories, which were, hey, we didn't vote for this. We thought we were voting to deport gangs, not moms. and now they're doing this. And we all said, you did vote for that. You just didn't understand what you were doing. You people are wrong. And my concern yesterday was, if they complain enough and in the right way, and she's sprung from the lockup, at least for now, they will conclude we were always right. Trump was always merciful and beneficent, and he never did, in fact, intend to deport moms. He really did mean only gangs, just like we said, and you liberal elites who said we were wrong, you're the ones who are actually wrong here.
Well, here's the flaw in that argument, though.
Oh, all right. Well,
the mayor, remember, the mayor
right?
candidate
he says,
of that town said, no, that's right. We want to get rid of these people. And he's the most conservative of the group. So
could be.
I don't know.
Now, different motivations for the different groups, and maybe this has something to do with it too. My second thought was, now that she's been released, I thought, they should go back down there and ask people, well, what do you think now? And it might even be worth finding out that, okay, we confirmed the theory. They now think that they were right the whole time. What would that tell us? But then I realized, on the other hand, you pointed out in reporting today's development that she's out of lockup, but could still be deported. So she's not out of trouble just yet, which also means that if they are in fact smart people, and we were wondering about whether that was true, then down in the locals and Carol's response herself, they can't afford to make any public statement other than that they were right the whole time and that Donald Trump is a beneficent dictator and genius and listened to the people. Because if they say, I'm disillusioned, I'm glad she's out, but what was she locked up for in the first place? This is a huge betrayal. Then she gets deported after all. But if they say, see, I told you it was a mistake, all you liberals who say we voted wrong and we didn't understand the policy, we understood the policy just fine, Trump will say, that's what I want to hear. Right, terrific. So she's pardoned or let go, and her case is over.
Right, that's one of the many reasons that when hostages are released, you never pay attention to what they say.
That's kind of, I guess,
you'll feel good that they were released, but don't, my brother's still in jail, and I can't help but think that Trump was responsible for my release, and I love him.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of what you have. So we have to take that with a grain of salt. And now I don't know what that means for the other report, but these lawyers may find out, I guess, depending on how connected they are. Either they get to keep the money no matter what, and Trump maybe they don't even show him the report.
Well, the best thing to do is to, figure out some neutral way of looking at this. No, not the news. You go down to West Virginia and ask a diner breakfast guy.
Yes, obviously.
What do you think about all of this in Missouri? And he will say to you, listen, I think that they should get rid of all the illegals and bring me more waffles.
Yeah.
Wait, where's my waffles?
Right.
What happened to my waitress?
Biden took my waffles. They'll have to conclude. That must be it. So I don't know. Yeah. It's a very complicated situation, certainly, and I question sometimes how deep the analysis may be going in certain quarters. But in most places, you don't have to be a genius to figure out, hey, somebody who's operating this place as an authoritarian dictatorship, even though I like him, I understand I have to be careful around him. You take the biggest
you do have
Trump
to be careful, but
and,
at the same time, it's one of the many reasons why people with the resources like Harvard and big law firms, big law, have to fight back. Because if you just concede, then the people in Missouri say, well, he must have been right because, look, it's working.
Yes, that's
And if
true,
you fight him and he loses in court, then you're Pierre Poilievre. And you say, well, maybe, he should lose 13 points. It's all tied together. And you can't just let him win. You can't.
Okay. I like that outcome.
So this is a story in the Wall Street Journal following up something we said the other day. Trump is losing patience with Musk's outbursts over mega bill. Billionaires' attacks on Trump's tax bill are fraying his ties with the president. And Musk continues to attack it on X, the platform he's
got nothing else to do. So now that he's left government.
The break, as I said the other day, I don't know how significant it is, but the break is real. They are really not getting along at this particular point in time.
Not kayfabe.
and he's annoying, Trump's courtiers and surrounding a group of people who are trying to do something. And Musk doesn't want it done. So, I say good. That's why,
sure.
I'm perfectly happy. But it is real. It's not all fake for the press. And again, Trump is losing patience with Musk's outbursts over mega bill. You don't have to take that story at face value. But what you can do is look at this and say, okay, they're leaking negative stuff to the press.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and they're not investigating themselves for leaking either.
Yeah.
Well, it's good. It's good to see that, and it doesn't have to go as far as I think I also saw somebody publish the headline of. So Democrats are thinking maybe Musk can get back into good graces with the liberal side of the ledger, and I don't know exactly. I don't know whether that's happening, but
it's not happening.
I certainly don't want it to. But
no, it's just another string of people who met Musk and dallied with Musk and found it was a mistake.
Sure. Okay. Well, let me just I'll remind anybody who's in that sector about mostly the value of the enemy of my enemy is my friend thing. You're supposed to take away from that. That rarely works out. And you should have 6, 7, 25 columns worth of possible enemies.
It's short term.
It's not just 2. Yeah.
But don't take it at face value. It's not that it never works out. Often it does. But it's short term.
At best. But yeah, don't bet the farm on that. That's a trust but verify.
Yeah, you better have a plan B.
In fact, don't even trust. But yeah, the enemy of your enemy is also often your enemy. I just want to...
that's the Middle
caution
East.
You that that's possible. Or sometimes, though, they just say, I know I was Al-Qaeda, but that was last week.
Yeah.
I see.
But sometimes it's true, like in Syria.
Right.
So, sometimes it works.
You got to be on the lookout. I hope no one's thinking of cozying up to Musk. He's got much to answer for. But if he wants to make trouble for Trump, by all means.
Well, it just proves the old adage from Yankee Stadium. You can't know the players without a scorecard. It's just the way it is.
Holy cow. Okay.
Hey, you know what else happened yesterday?
No.
The New York City mayoral debate. It used to be said that the mayor of New York had the second most difficult job in the world.
Oh,
I think it's now the first most difficult job because Trump is showing that being president isn't that hard.
Yeah, I guess so. Huh. All right. Well, Mayor Adams may be showing the same thing.
Mayor Adams is going to run as an independent, but there's another Adams,
right,
who is running.
Gomez,
who is a city council person and actually had a very, very good debate. Everybody ganged up on Andrew Cuomo. Not that debate changed things. Debates generally don't change things.
Yes, they do.
But everybody ganged up on Andrew Cuomo and actually hit him pretty hard. And they went after him over his pandemic response, where a lot of people died, and over his sexual impropriety charges, for which he resigned. And the going theory is the reason he resigned as mayor is that just put the issue out of the headlines so that he could come back at some future point, which in fact is what he did.
Huh. Well, I don't know. I guess you can't argue I'm sure if he had said that was the reason he was resigning. He's resigning as governor so that he can run for mayor later. I would have said, "What? You're crazy." Why would
mayor's still a big position? He wasn't going to be governor because people weren't going to elect him that. But the mayor's still a fairly significant position. And beats whatever Chris Cuomo, his brother's doing.
I guess so, which is, I don't know what.
Which is the all-important reason to do this, It's not like he cares about New Yorkers.
That may be. I just want to I want to be cooler than my brother. It's not the mayor of Kennett, Missouri. It's the mayor of New York City.
By the way, the primary day is on June 24, which is less than 3 weeks from now.
Okay. And it's ranked choice voting and something, and they're trying to educate people very quickly that if you don't like Andrew Cuomo, you don't rank him like, I'll rank him as the last resort. You just leave him out entirely.
Right. Adrienne Adams is the Adams that's running in the Democratic primary, not Eric Adams. So there's no confusion.
Kooky.
Adrienne Adams is a city council member. She actually had an excellent debate, and she's been rising in terms of polls in the candidacy. I don't know that she's in second place at this point, but Cuomo still is leading everybody. He's going to be the likely candidate because debates don't change that much. But she had a couple of good moments. At what point, Andrew Cuomo said to her, "You're on the city council, useless group of people. All you do is block housing."
Oh, really?
And Adams said, that may have been true 30 years ago when you were governor, but, the council is completely different now. You should pay attention and keep up with things, old man.
Right. Your dad's not the governor, pal. Way to go. Yeah. All right. Another guy stuck in the past, the brain freeze like Trump.
Yeah. So, it was of interest. And, those of us who grew up in New York always follow this stuff with interest. I mean, basically, if you're mayor, you're corrupt, but, you'd like to know which side of the corruption you're on.
Give a new kind of corruption a try, everybody.
Yeah. Is it the real estate developers or is it Wall Street? What kind of corruption are we talking about here? It matters in terms of, quality of life in New York City.
Yeah, right. I don't know. So this time we want pro-bagel corruption, if possible.
Well, he was asked what his favorite bagel was, and, he said, "I don't eat bagels."
Yeah. All right. Right. And I don't eat
them
with a
Philly
knife and
cheesesteak
fork
with
as well.
Swiss.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Gruyere.
Yeah.
Maybe. Make it worse.
Doesn't work.
Okay. Right. Plus, you got the ingredients in the wrong order.
Yeah. And then, as you mentioned, Trump issued a new travel ban. Everybody's banned from coming into the country. 12 nations.
Everybody
Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, the Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, guys. Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. Basically, the only people who can come into the country are white Afrikaners who have committed hate crimes.
Oh, that's a prerequisite. It helps to get in. Haiti. Why? What have they done?
Now, as a reminder, in his first term, he banned Muslims from entering the country, blocked by the courts.
Right.
The Supreme Court approved its third iteration because the Supreme Court is corrupt as...
as bleep, somewhere.
As ever. Former President Biden rescinded the travel ban on his first day of office. You voted to have that rescinded again. Oh, that was another question I was going to ask you just as a generic.
All right.
If you're subject to rescission.
Rescission, yes.
Have you been rescised? I mean, what's the word for it?
Oh, rescinded.
Okay.
Yeah. Rescission, though, that's usually, is that what we're talking about? That's usually like clawing back federal spending authority. Rescission.
Yeah, well, Trump's going to resize the lawyers there.
Oh, rescind their, right. They would, or the
they'll pay him and then claw the money back, like you said. So if you're subject to rescission, you've been rescinded?
Yes.
Or resized?
If it works. If you're subject to rescission, you're just subject to rescission. If they then get you, you've had your money rescinded.
Okay.
Through rescission authority.
These technical terms always, flummox me because I am not a lawyer and I don't work in government.
Right, but if you can tell us the technical medical name for anything. It goes wrong in your ankle, it's one of these.
Yeah, then we start speaking elitist Latin,
Yeah.
So you don't know.
Right, because you're Latin American.
Right. Well, interestingly, the medical issues that came up because the New York Times did a list of the disappearing funds for chronic diseases. And these are the nearly 2,500 NIH grants that have been ended or delayed.
Oh, yes.
There's an enormous list, and it's really hurting medical care as well as medical research. And I want to know from the mayor of Kennett whether or not that's in fact what he voted for.
Yes, of course. I'm absolutely 100% on.
We have to get these illegal diseases out of the country.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You make them illegal and then you deport them.
Well, there's 2,500 different diseases being researched, and I have one of them. So 2,499 of these are waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yeah, they're bogus.
The one I have. Me. Yeah, and all I really had to do was floss better, really. So you didn't have to have a grant, but a $2 million grant to find out whether DEI is causing me to not floss. We can have that. So, yeah, canceling all this medical research, which, I mean, I guess they don't really, what can I tell you? The dodgy types, they don't know and don't care what's going on. And they read these things as not, well, I'm studying this stuff in order to see if I can find a cure for XYZ disease in it. They just simply say, they're studying, lizard saliva. Oh my God, what a waste of time. Well, why do you think they're doing that? Are they being spit on by lizards and they're wondering if they're allergic? No. They're looking for something real. No one wants papers about, it's really something about lizard saliva. It's gross. $1.8 million, please. No, but they never will. They never learn that because they never look past. But John McCain used to do this all the time in his pork buster things. So this is good news for John McCain, really.
Right. So as a follow-up to the New York City mayoral
more
campaign, well, I came across this piece just now from Perry Bacon Jr. writing in the Washington Post.
I see it.
What it all means.
Oh, good.
And he says, at first glance, it's stunning that former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and State Representative Zohran Mamdani are so far ahead of their competitors in the primary, at least according to the polls.
Okay.
But if you follow Democratic politics, the ascendance of Cuomo and Mamdani is less surprising. In primaries across the country over the past decade, a block of disproportionately younger college-educated and very liberal Democrats have coalesced around progressive candidates. Older and more ideologically moderate Democrats, including those without college degrees, and African Americans back centrist candidates with deep ties to the party's establishment, and that's what's happening here. And so that doesn't leave space for anybody else.
Okay.
And the persistence of this divide matters far beyond New York. Older moderate Democrats and younger progressive have disagreed sharply on how to take on Trump, and it's going to be hard for Democrats to be unified if they don't get their act together. Now, you can make fun of the overly online people as Bernie bros.
I don't think I can, but yes.
But I think that's not particularly productive. And you can make fun of the not online enough, center left centrist candidates as being, a bunch of old farts who really need to get with the program. But the fact is that you have to coalesce around a candidate in the end, and this is nothing new. This goes back to Will Rogers. I'm not a member of an organized party. I'm a Democrat.
Yeah.
It's always been that way. It's as far back as not only I can remember, but as far back as I remember reading about. It's always been that way.
Yeah. And
so I don't know of the ultimate significance of it, but it'd be nice if people got their act together and supported the same
That
person.
would be helpful, and that's been a constant problem too. As far back as I can remember, that there's these at least two sort of wings to choose from, and if the party coalesces around the center left type candidate, the message then goes, well, whoever wins, the message then goes out, well, now we all need to coalesce around this candidate. That's the candidate of the Democratic Party. If it's the center left candidate, their op-eds prevailing upon the progressives. You can't always get what you want. Get in line and do it. And they say, all right, fine, but we're going, if we're disappointed, we're going to speak up. But okay, we'll do it. But if somehow the progressive candidate should win the primary, and either no one writes the op-ed, all right, we all need to coalesce behind the candidate now, or when that call goes out, the center left say, well, Republicans will never cross the aisle to vote for this person. We're abandoning them, and this is a lost election. Well, no, hold on a second. I thought it would be our turn, to see the other side say, all right, we got to get, and sometimes they will and sometimes they won't, but at least in the lead up to the primary, there's always the threat of, well, we're going to stay at home, sit on our hands because we think Republicans won't like this person. Well, I know they won't like this person. The person's a Democrat. That's the whole thing. They're not going to vote for it. Don't worry about that. The question is, can you get on board? Oh, me? No, I won't. Oh, that's weird because everybody had your back last time, and you lost.
But you are illustrating a couple of different points here. Certainly the one about how democratic politics works when it comes time for the general election.
Yeah.
But, there's also this old idea that you're supposed to elect or nominate at least the most progressive leftist person who can win.
Yes.
And you can undermine who can win by not supporting them, of course.
Right.
But sometimes it's real, and the person you elected really doesn't have that much support. So somebody with 27% support and winning the primary because everybody else has less because there's 14 candidates doesn't necessarily tell you what you think it tells you. And that's one
never going to be the
aspect of this. But another is you're illustrating something about the Democratic Party that simply isn't true with the Republican Party. The Republican Party is a cult. And they're far more likely to get in line and support the candidate, the Pierre Poilievre effect, if you will.
Yeah.
That what happens is if you perceive that somebody won the nomination, everybody aligns with them somehow.
Yeah, even if they're
forgets what they used to think, and they change their mind sometimes diametrically opposite to what they thought in order to approve of the candidate. Whereas at the Democratic Party, they say no.
Yeah.
I didn't like it before. That's why I didn't vote for him in the primary. I'm not voting for him now. They're completely different parties. The Democratic Party is a coalition. And so sometimes the members of the coalition are stubborn and obstinate about what they will or will not yield on. And that's not just on the progressive side. It's also on the centrist side. And so, the dynamics are just different.
Yeah.
And that's why, when you look at something and say, well, what do people think about the economy? Well, it's always going to be higher under Trump because Republicans will line up under him regardless of how bad the economy is. Whereas Democrats, even when a Democrat is in the White House, are for the most part going to support the economy more than when a Republican is. But they'll still say, yeah, but, I'm not, still happy with it. And they'll say so. And so the dynamics aren't the parties are not mirror images of each other. They never were, and they never will be.
Although the only place that there's any sort of mirror imaging is when Republicans accuse Democrats of having done something. The truth there usually is, well, they're confessing that they have done that thing.
Yeah.
In that sense,
an accusation is a confession. That's more true on the Republican side. And then the Democratic side, so even there's no symmetry.
I bring it up because you had mentioned, the Republican Party is a cult. And I just happened to have seen the other day some videotape of Aurora, Colorado City Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky, who may or may not ring a bell. She's also the person chiefly responsible for the rumor mongering that ended up morphing into Tren de Aragua is taking over our country. And that's why we have to deport everybody who's brown to prison in El Salvador. That was her story. Oh my God, it's Aurora, Colorado. Remember that? Taking over the whole apartment building. And I guess one of her latest meltdowns is how she's screaming that in the wake of the Boulder attack, that this is, well, other people are saying, including Donald Trump, this is the fault of this Egyptian immigrant person and their entire family. The rest of the Republican Party is saying, actually, it's the fault of Democrats because Democrats.
It's Joe Biden's fault.
Right. So blaming the Democrats. Anyway, she breaks down and cries and screams on her podcast that it is this is because Democrats are a cult. And in fact, Jews are the cult. And it makes me so sad to see Jews forsaking their religion and instead pledging allegiance to this cult of the Democratic Party. And so it's a good tip-off.
So you're saying Democrats are Jews?
Yes. Now,
might as well get that out there because, it's pretty clear what she's saying.
It is, although it becomes murkier as she also claims to be Jewish. But I don't know whether she always was or just became or just said, oh, I love Israel so much and that's why people think she's Jewish, or maybe she really is or isn't. I don't know. But
she's part of the I love Israel so much I want it destroyed cult.
Yes. In fact, I love Israel so much I want America destroyed along with it. So okay.
Yeah, well, everything should be because when Armageddon comes, that's how it works. So,
Anyway,
listen, we all die eventually. That Joni Ernst thing is really still got legs and people are still talking about it.
Yes.
And Republicans are still apologizing over it. It's
not her, but others. Yeah. It's pretty wild. I saw a couple of people circulating all sorts. There's hats, T-shirts, everything. So all kinds of "we're all going to die" merchandise out there. It's
bigger than Taco Thursday.
Yeah. And don't say taco because it's another thing I learned now. I'm still for doing the taco thing. But I guess one of the Democratic schemes to capitalize on the popularity of the taco thing, we're gonna give out tacos outside of a Trump event or something.
Well, you're going to push him to keep the tariffs, and that's
I guess that's supposed to be the theory. Yeah. It actually came up interestingly to me in the context of the Carroll story, as we saw reporting about it, and as Greg Sargent reporting about it made the interesting comment. I don't know whether he was going to follow up with it as a storyline or not, but saying we didn't really see Democrats speaking up very much about the Carroll story and trying to get that thing corrected. The only people speaking up were Republicans and the locals, and then Trump responded to them. And I was kind of wondering whether, I wonder if, first of all, there's not a lot of elected Democrats in the area, but you could, I guess, turn to national Democrats. And I'm sure national Democrats, had they been asked for comment on it, would have said, this is crazy.
But they weren't asked.
One, they weren't asked. And two, I guess if you're a local Democrat, like if you got to probably calculate, if I get out there, if there's momentum for releasing Carroll because local Republicans are for it and questioning their loyalties to Trump, if the Democrats jump on and say, release her, and Trump then says, that's it, screw her, I hate these local Democrats, then
well,
who
again,
wins?
A point illustrated, you always have to separate that which is local, because all politics is local.
Yeah.
With local reasons for doing something. Even if Joni Ernst is running as a statewide candidate, not a national candidate, versus Trump, who is, as president, a national candidate, the only one.
Yeah.
So, things that may work or not work with the national candidate may work or may not work with a local candidate. They're not the same, and so you don't approach it the same way. The idea here is Joni Ernst blunder is going to hurt her in Iowa. How much remains to be seen, but it's such a big blunder, it's actually hurting Republicans in other states. And I don't mean it's hurting them nationally. I mean it's hurting them within their own state.
Well, good. It should. Yeah. Republicans, it's interesting watching the Senate Republicans squirm now, too. And occasionally, I don't know what's making them acknowledge reality, but they're doing it.
Because, well, firstly, Musk is threatening not to support them with money, and that's all they care about.
That could be.
And he's threatening, at least in theory, to primary them, and that's the other thing that they care about.
Yeah.
So that's how you get their attention.
I guess. I saw a video
primary them with money. Otherwise, they don't care about anything else, including,
that must be it.
We all die.
Yeah, even Senator Kennedy fighting with Howard Lutnick about tariff theory yesterday. And it was, I don't know, it was a very weird. I can discuss that a little bit later, but you and I have come to the end of our time. I should... But I can always play, right? I can always play the fanfares and pretend you're here. We'll catch up on Monday. Okay, hey, welcome back, everybody. I pressed the button this time. Good morning, and welcome back to the show. All right, we got to decide kind of how we're going to approach the second hour, and whether it's going to have any shape or just fall together by accident. By the way, I really did love. Thank you again to Frank Kite, who sent us this organ fanfare piece. It really is fantastic, and it's on YouTube. What's it called? I should let me see if I can find his note about it. And he doesn't tell me what it's called. But he gives me the link to it in YouTube. The popular platform thing. So what is it? Richard Purvis is the musician playing the piece here, and you can kind of hear it. I should mute it here on the desktop, but it's just I'm sorry. Maybe Richard Purvis is the composer. I don't know. Fanfare Richard Purvis. YouTube isn't telling me a great deal about. I got to go to the actual page and see if there's some information here. Fanfare Richard Purvis is just the title of the YouTube video here, and I'm not enough of a music aficionado to know who's the composer and who is not. Let's see. All right, here we go. Here's some info. A new website has been launched for lovers of organ music at allstopsout.com. So that's, I guess, the ultimate source of this. So let's see. What are we looking at here? The sound and vision of Mr. Siegfried Frank, ARCO, at the T.C. Lewis organ. in St. Paul's Cathedral, Melbourne, I guess Australia then. And so, first of all, you should know that in the background of this piece, all the toilets are flushing in the opposite direction, and everything is upside down. So imagine playing this at the bottom of the world upside down, and it just makes it that much more impressive. But the piece is really interesting, and I was thinking it would be funny. Not only is it hilarious in its grandeur, knowing how Greg does not really go for that as fanfare, but it goes on forever. And I don't know how much of it I can play before we get in trouble with Richard Purvis, if that's the musician or if he's the composer and he's dead, or the estate, or I don't know. I don't know what kind of copyright issues we're talking about, but you should really, you should listen to it all the way through. And I thought it would be funny, although it really would get in the way of doing the segment if I just kept starting the thing over and over again. I sampled a little bit of that, but anyway, you get the idea. But I think you should get the full idea. And good eye there, Frank, for picking that out. And I don't know how it came to be that interested you, but it was helpful and fun, and really enjoyed it. Okay, so let's reset the soundboard so I can make sure to do all the breaks correctly. Other items up for consideration, other items up for bid in our showcase showdown. Where's Pocket? Okay, so and some of these things are not quite identified. Oh yeah, perhaps you might enjoy this. I don't know. We'll just jump into this because this is at the top of the list for having been the last one added to the list. Yesterday, I guess we noted that Caroline Leavitt was attacking the CBO before, telling us all what they truthfully thought would be the result of the big, beautiful bill in terms of adding to the deficit. And ordinarily, I don't really care that much about what Glenn Kessler has to say as the fact checker over at Washington Post, because when we read it, it's usually some stupid outrage because he's decided to, split hairs over something to make it look like a Democrat had, done something wrong so that it was okay. There was now one Democratic fact check to be counted alongside one Republican fact check. But the Republican had said everybody's going to become a billionaire because of tariffs. Well, fact check, no. Versus, I don't know, a Democrat said that this was really a First Amendment problem, but it actually involves both the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment. And so we rate them 15 Pinocchios, right? Well, this one is helpful additional information, which I think most listeners probably gathered for themselves, but maybe we were just mostly talking about. She was complaining that, well, the CBO is dangerously biased because since at least the year 2000, no employees at the CBO had ever donated to a single Republican candidate for office, which is a super weird metric for 10 different reasons, not the least of which are the ones that Glenn Kessler actually focuses on. We just sort of focused on the fact that, well, isn't it interesting that given that this entire department of people are professional budget analysts or connected with the work of professional budget analysts anyway, and will have examined budgets of both Democratic majority Congresses and Republican majority Congresses very, very closely and actually try to evaluate what they do, that then, that being the case, none of them wanted to donate to any Republicans for some strange reason. So maybe not the greatest flex in the world for Caroline, but in addition, there's more that's wrong with this, and Glenn Kessler organizes them here. The White House's disingenuous claim about CBO's political leanings, what the White House calls a verifiable fact, is in fact a nonsense fact. And this is just kind of interesting. One, he lays the groundwork to approaching this whole thing in an interesting way, and then compiles the rest of the problems with it. So he quotes Caroline Leavitt's thing about this and how they haven't contributed any Republicans. And he begins by saying we, that is to say the Washington Post, have a high bar when it comes to fact-checking White House press secretaries. I don't think that's really true if it's a Democrat, but it is when it's a Republican. They are supposed to spin, dissemble, and mislead. And I don't know. They're not really, but I guess you expect them to. We prefer to focus on policymakers, not spinmeisters. Okay. I don't believe you, but okay. But the White House's campaign against the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan agency that vets the costs of major legislation, is veering into the ridiculous. And I guess I would also point out probably the CBO itself wouldn't ordinarily qualify as focusing on policymakers. They're not policymakers, they're just policy analysts. But I could see Glenn Kessler fact-checking them nonetheless, but he doesn't here. The White House is mad because CBO concluded that the one big, beautiful bill of tax and spending cuts will add trillions to the national debt over 10 years. The House narrowly passed the House resolution, and some GOP senators have balked, as has billionaire Elon Musk, so the bill's in political trouble. Never mind that similar conclusions have been reached from right and left-leaning organizations, including the Tax Foundation, the Penn Wharton Budget Model, the Manhattan Institute, and the Center for American Progress. As the official scorekeeper for Congress, the CBO has clout, so the White House decided to attack the messenger. Now on to the facts. When we asked about this claim, Caroline Leavitt's claim, a White House official defended it as a verifiable fact, and she provided a link to the Federal Election Commission records showing, right, and what's the verifiable fact? Well, we said that no, and they're probably right, no employee of the CBO has contributed to a Republican candidate since the year 2000. The real question is, what does it mean, right? So, okay. Well, what about this whole thing? Well, here, it's a verifiable fact. You can look it up for yourself. Here's a link. And it does, in fact, show 250 contributions since the year 2000 made by people who listed the CBO as their employer. But he says there are also stupid facts. And this one is remarkably dumb. I mean, it is verifiable as a fact, but does it show anything? And it doesn't. That's the point. And if anything, if it shows anything at all, you can certainly come to the opposite conclusion as I did. People who know budgets inside and out, particularly Republican budgets, don't like to help elect Republicans for some reason. But it actually really, presumably, if you really think about what it can be said to illustrate, well, nothing. And here's why. The records show that, yes, all of the contributions were made to Democrats or Democratic-leaning causes, as he says, such as gay rights, which I guess it's not that it's a Democratic-leaning cause. What it really means is only Democrats will even pretend to care about gay rights. Republicans don't even make the effort of pretending anymore. They're just anti-gay rights. So if you want to have anything to do with preservation or promotion of rights for people other than straight white males, essentially, because females are excluded from that, then there's really only one way to go. Anyway, but upon studying the list, we discovered that many of these donations were made by the same people, and that should probably have occurred to you and tipped you off to something. And it did. Going back to 2015, when Trump first entered the political scene, we counted 210 contributions, mostly $10, $20 or smaller, right? By just 16 people. Oh, going back all the way to the year 2000, only added 8 more people, increased it by 50%. So here's the deal. So what's that? 16 people plus another 8 means 24 people over 24 different people over the last 25 years. So that should tip you off here. Only an average of one person a year, I guess, if you look at it that way. But don't bother looking at it that way. The CBO employs about 275 people, not 24, right? And of course, there's a lot of churn, just like anywhere else. So hundreds of people would have worked at the agency since 2015, let alone 2000. This is scarcely a representative pool of anybody, really. What's striking is how such a small percentage of CBO staff members made political contributions at all, presumably because most did not want their neutrality to be questioned. So the reality is, no. Did you know that no CBO employee has donated to a single Republican candidate since the year 2000? Well, that's because the overwhelming majority of CBO employees say, I don't want to give anybody any leverage for an attack like what Caroline Leavitt is going to do to me. So I don't give money to political candidates at all. I cultivate a persona, a nonpartisan persona. I don't want to leave any record behind. Now, a few people have said, to hell with that, I'm going to do what I want. How many of them? 24 out of 275 at any given moment, much less the fact that there's probably 1,000 people who've moved through there, more in the last 25 years. And still, you can only collect 24 of them who ever at any point said, I'm going to make a political contribution. I am. And how much did they give? $10, $20. Not a whole lot. So, yeah, that's a good point. Now, he goes on to say, we checked the background of each of the 16 people who made contributions since 2015, the Trump era. Many have moved on to other jobs, retired, or even died. Most held relatively low-level positions, unlikely to be involved in a major budget analysis. Did you know that people from the CBO gave money to Democrats? Yeah. Who? Well, for one thing, one of the data analysts, or one of the data entry, rather, people, they type in all the numbers for the analysts to look at. And also a file clerk. And it was 20 years ago. And they're dead now. Like, oh, yeah. What could have, they no longer work for the CBO's analysis from yesterday is wrong and biased because 1%, what I guess is I get 10% at any given time. 10% of the CBO employees once gave $10 in the last 10 years to a candidate, but there wasn't a Republican candidate. Oh, it was a file clerk. Yeah. Oh, and they left in 2018. They are not there now. They're not even able to walk around to the water cooler and try to influence the analysts. They've moved on. They died. But no thought whatsoever given to this. That really was a dumb factoid to try to, persuade people with. Moreover, only 3 people, 2 editors and an agricultural analyst, made any donations in the 2024 cycle. So did you know that nobody has ever given since 2000? All right. What about the people who are there now? 3 people out of 275 gave money. The biggest donation was one made to Vice President Kamala Harris, well, I guess when running for president, but I'm not sure. $100. Big spender, right? That's a good That's a good chunk donation. Don't get me wrong, but it's no Elon Musk financing primaries for an entire party. But the rest were donations under $30 to congressional candidates or to Harris. There was nothing much in the way of a presidential election that Trump should be mad about, right? Yet Leavitt stood before the White House press corps and declared that many staffers had donated to Democrats and decried that this showed that CBO had become partisan and political. She failed to mention that the CBO director, Philip Swagel, I don't know how you pronounce that, Swagel, served in the George W. Bush administration. He was Republican, in case you've forgotten about that guy. Campaign records show he donated $1,000 to a Republican candidate for governor in 2014. It was way back, but that already, I guess, belies the statement, right? Did you know that no CBO employees gave money to any Republican candidate since the year 2000? Well, what about 2014? Does that count? That seems like it happened since 2000. But maybe he wasn't at the CBO at the time that he gave the money, so it doesn't work, right? And so now you are at the CBO. And by the way, this anecdote, this factoid that she produced, what this little thing here illustrates is, suppose 10,000 highly partisan Republican activists who each gave $1 million to Donald Trump last year took jobs at the CBO this year. You could search forever and never find out that those people who are now at the CBO and in fact influencing the analysis of the budget are in fact huge Trump supporters. Presumably, if this were the case, they would have come to a different conclusion about the big, beautiful bill, but that could happen. But none of their contributions would show up as contributions from CBO employees because they were employees of someone else when they made the contribution. So again, it just illustrates how wildly inaccurate this whole measure can be. It's not the same group of people since 2025. Anyway, as they point out, right? So it fails to mention that the current CBO director has in fact made contributions to Republican candidates since 2000, but still doesn't show up in the study, the survey of giving by CBO employees, because he did it in 2014 when he was working somewhere else. The CBO director is chosen, by the way, in case, I'm sure this must have occurred to you, chosen by the House and Senate budget committees under an informal arrangement in which the lead role alternates between the House and the Senate budget chairs. In 2019, Swaggle, was chosen to a 4-year term by then Senator Mike Enzi, Republican of Wyoming. He was reappointed in 2023 when he was recommended by Representative Jody Arrington of Texas from the House side. The White House did not respond to questions, by the way, about Swaggle's Republican background. Under its hiring process, CBO does not consider political affiliation, saying it seeks to hire the best qualified job candidate, merit or whatever, solely on the basis of his or her fitness to perform the duties of the position, but it does consider whether a job candidate has been publicly associated with a political campaign, candidate, office holder, or cause. The agency also places limitations on employees' political activities and public advocacy, which will necessarily narrow the pool of donations being made too, right? Essentially, nobody gave any money to any Republicans. Well, for the most part, nobody gave any money to anybody because it's mostly against their rules. So what up with the Pinocchios, huh? Well, what the White House calls a verifiable fact is in fact a nonsense fact delivered in service of a false claim. The FEC list of contributions does not demonstrate that the agency, which is run by a Republican, has turned partisan and political on behalf of Democrats. Instead, it shows that a handful of low-level employees made a bunch of small contributions to Democrats. In other words, it does not demonstrate the larger point made by Levitt. The White House apparently thought it was clever to go back 25 years, but let's not forget, before 2011, Donald Trump donated more to Democrats himself than Republicans. That's a verifiable fact, too, but we could not claim it means much today. Levitt gets 4 Pinocchios for that one. Okay, if you care about the Pinocchio numbers. I just thought that was actually a good rundown of the various reasons why it was a stupid thing to try to prove anyway, and didn't prove what she said it was attempting to prove. I thought that was worth our time. At any rate, let's see. Other things that I want to share with you, and I'm going to have to remind myself what the hell are some of these things doing here. And in order to do so, I'm going to have to verify that I'm human to somebody. Politico asking me to do this one. All right. This is a good segue because it gives me a chance to catch up with the incoming emails from Jeremy Freiberger, who has a long ongoing conversation with me all the time, and only some of which I'm able to get around to including in the show. But the one we really want to alert you to here, but I have to. The first one I want to alert you to here is that Jeremy has been saying for quite some time, and I think I've at least portrayed it once on the show, but he's got a theory going here, which you should keep in mind, which is, I think you'll likely agree with it, or maybe have had the same thought or similar thoughts, that in all likelihood, since Trump never wants to admit that he's wrong about anything, and he wants to pretend he's right about everything, and in particular the economy, that he's a businessman, he knows how to run the economy. So he's going to use his authoritarian leanings and muscle good metrics on the economy out of people, even if the true metrics on the economy are bad. He either will block them from being released or insist that they be recalculated with some other stupid methodology such that they look good, and that he was going to generally put a thumb on the scale and insist that, if there's bad economic news, either don't report it or change it, essentially. And that's something I think we've mentioned on the show and given him, put him on the record here so that you can follow along. And every time he comes up with a new example of it, we can add it. And let's see, was it the last? I don't know if we did the last one, which was just a couple of days ago, where he said he was just coming back in with the comment of, made in America, bringing back factories and jobs back, USA, USA, and pointing out that on Bloomberg's homepage today, that was Monday, literally the very last story, if you scroll all the way to the bottom and all the way over to the far right corner, it says U.S. manufacturing contracted in May for the third month, I guess, in a row. On any day in the Biden presidency, this would have been Bloomberg's top headline, like a big 60-point type headline. And it would have been the right-wing ecosystem's main story for a week. Today, though, Bloomberg almost couldn't be bothered to mention it. I wonder what's different, he asks. Meanwhile, where are the Democrats? I don't really agree with the Dem Party's leadership's game plan on this. I don't know whether they have since hit upon that or not. But I thought it was a very interesting point, and one that goes along with this Politico piece. I want to, again, remind you that Jeremy's kind of called this out and has inviting you all to track it along with him. So that if with that in mind, you'll stop on an article like this one in Politico. Trump officials delayed farm trade report over deficit forecast. What does this mean? Subheader helps clarify things, I think. Administration officials blocked publication of a written analysis that normally accompanies the report. Which report? You'll find out. Because they disliked what it said about the deficit. Yeah. So evidence for Jeremy here. Marsha Brown, you can thank Jeremy for this one over at Politico. Trump administration officials delayed and redacted a government forecast of some kind because it predicts an increase in the nation's trade deficit in farm goods later this year, according to two people familiar with the matter. And let me get a note to myself here. I had mentioned earlier about Senator Kennedy fighting with Lutnick about trade deficit and trade theory in general, and maybe of interest in this context. The article continues, the numbers run counter to President Donald Trump's messaging that his economic policies, including tariffs, will reduce U.S. trade imbalances. And remember, there's a couple going theories about the tariffs. One that might make sense is the one that's about reciprocity, where even though it's not true that it's reciprocal because we're raising tariffs unilaterally on countries that don't have necessarily big tariffs on us, but also there's the idea of, well, we'll correct trade imbalances. Now, they have a bad and incorrect idea of what represents a significant trade imbalance, not to say large in scale, but one that is statistically significant, one that you should be paying attention to. The fact that they're concerned with, well, we import $10 million from this country, but they only import $1 million from us. Well, is that country 1/10 the size of us? Maybe. That might help explain things, but they never take that into consideration. Anyway, that's what Lutnick and Kennedy were battling about yesterday. But here, the numbers in this agricultural report, I guess, run counter to the messaging that his economic policies, including tariffs, will reduce trade imbalances. The politically inconvenient data prompted administration officials to block publication of the written analysis normally attached to the report because they disliked what it said about the deficit. And I'm still not entirely sure what the report is, but it's from the Agriculture Department, so that helps explain some of the obscurity of it, perhaps, to those of us who are not farmers. The published report, released on Monday but dated May 29th, for whatever reason, includes numbers that are unchanged from how they would have read in the unredacted report, said the people who were granted anonymity to discuss internal decision-making. Policymakers, farm groups, and commodities traders rely on the closely watched report. That explains why I'm not a commodity trader or a farmer or a policymaker. But this report, which the Agriculture Department issues quarterly, they depend on it for their analysis of imports and exports of major farm commodities, including cotton and livestock. The unusual rollout could raise questions about potential political meddling with government reports that have traditionally been trusted for decades. There you go, Jeremy. It's happening. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's read a little bit more from this Politico article proving Jeremy to be correct. So the suppression of this additional published report that goes along with, the analysis that went along with the report that was suppressed. Remember, we're talking about, I got to remind myself up at the top here. Administration officials delayed and redacted a government forecast because it predicts an increase in the nation's trade deficit in farm goods coming up later this year. And the numbers run counter to the messaging. So this inconvenient data prompts administration officials to block publication of the analysis that usually goes along with the quarterly report from the USDA. Okay. So who depends on the report? Once again, policymakers, farm groups, commodities traders, for instance. He's manipulating the markets at this point by blocking real information about how commodities trading is going as between the United States and foreign customers and vice versa. The highly unusual, I had just said unusual rollout, but the highly unusual rollout could raise questions about potential political meddling, with government reports that have traditionally been trusted for decades. Objectivity is really key here, and the public depends on it, said Joe Glauber, a former USDA chief economist. To lose that trust would be terrible. Well, guess what? They've lost that trust, and they are terrible. Now, you put the two of those things together, they're terrible because they do things that cause everyone to lose trust in them, among other things. All right, a USDA spokesman, though, blamed the delay on an internal review. Well, it was. The internal bureaucrats appointed by Donald Trump, the political appointees, delayed it during an internal review because it would make the boss mad. So it's not really much of an answer, but this is the way they put it. The report was hung up on an internal clearance process and was not finalized in time for its typical deadline, said USDA spokesperson Alex Varsamis. Alec, not Alex, with a C at the end. In a statement, given this report is not statutory, as with many other reports USDA does, the department is undergoing a review of all of its non-statutory reports, including this one, to determine next steps. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's a great statement, right? It could technically be true and still be indicative of an improper process. Oh, we're reviewing it internally to determine next steps. Like, will we just suppress this forever or what? Like that, it's not untrue that it was an internal review. That's the problem. So anyway, I don't know. That's their offered explanation. It's not clear when or if the written analysis portion will be released. The previous forecast, published in February, projected a deficit of $49 billion for the current fiscal year, an increase from the November 2024 report, just so you know. The new analysis revises the projection to a record $49.5 billion, beating the previous record of $31.8 billion in fiscal 2024. So, again, just saying, at the end of the Biden administration, the trade deficit, the agricultural trade deficit, I guess, what they're talking about, $31.8 billion at the end of 2024. Biden did that. It's his fault. I will fix everything. I'm a businessman. Okay, implement my policies. Here's my tariffs are going to fix it specifically. All right, boom, tariff. And I didn't even taco out of the tariffs yet. How we doing? What's it look like, agriculture? Well, according to our calculations, the trade deficit in agricultural products will go from $31.8 billion to $49.5 billion. You are actually, increasing it? What's the percentage there? 30 to 50. So that's an extra 20%, I guess, on top of things. Is that right? I don't know. I have to figure that out now. Maybe I'm all right. Sometimes I do the wrong metric there, but okay. From 32 billion to about 50 billion. The point is, a lot of billions are getting added, and your policy was supposed to actually, you said, was going to bring it down, and instead it went up, and it went up a lot. So let me think about this here for a second. 30 plus. So yeah, really, it's like 50% increase, right? 30 billion. 50% to 30 billion is, say, 15 billion. You add 15 billion on top of the 30 will get you to about 45. So yeah, and it was higher than that, but really it started higher than almost 32 billion. So about 50% is probably a good. That's a good number. Good answer, right? It's been 5 months, and we have enough data to say, yeah, you actually kind of exploded the agricultural trade imbalance. That's a bad result. So Republicans used the quarterly report's rising trade deficit projections during the Biden administration, of course, to accuse then-Secretary Tom Vilsack of not doing enough to promote U.S. farm exports. Agriculture secretaries historically have used the forecasts to promote policy initiatives. The May report reflects Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs, the People said. The president has announced sharply higher tariffs on China and, quote, reciprocal levies on at least 10% on most U.S. trading partners. Tariffs are not the only contributing factor to any trade deficit or surplus, Glauber said. Americans' love for blueberries year-round, which, doesn't happen here in the United States, loyalty to French wines, and addiction to goods like coffees, which the U.S. largely does not produce, also contribute. A strong dollar can also widen the deficit. What we're importing is largely not what we're exporting, he said, noting that prices for common U.S. agricultural imports such as wine and liquor are not as volatile as the nation's agricultural exports like soybeans. You can imagine why, right? And nobody's brand loyal to soybeans. 2 federal courts last week halted and then allowed the reciprocal tariffs to proceed, a back and forth that only added to the uncertainty for farmers and businesses. Farmers are facing a more difficult economic outlook than they did during Trump's first term, when he had to bail them out with a big rescue package, right? Some foreign markets have permanently shrunk, and higher inflation has crimped farmers' bottom lines. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins has strongly defended Trump's tariffs, arguing that imposing them is essential to removing barriers to U.S. exports including non-tariff barriers. Can I just repeat that so that when I play you something later, you say, what? Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins has strongly defended Trump's tariffs, arguing that imposing them is essential. Why? It's essential in order to get other countries to remove barriers to U.S. exports, including non-tariff barriers. Not only should they lower their tariffs if they have any, but if they don't have any and we impose them, they should remove some other dumb barrier that I don't know what it is, but it isn't a tariff. She is leading a trade delegation to Italy this week and has several more trips planned later this year to promote American agricultural commodities. Okay, that last bit is not all that important that she's going to Italy, unless something happens in Italy, and then you'll be glad you found that out. But let me go over to Blue Sky and see if I can find where Aaron Rupar captured the video of the exchange between Kennedy and and Lutnick, although maybe I might not have retweeted that one or reposted, whatever we're saying, for that one. So that's not the easiest way to do it. But what is it? Is it Kennedy and Lutnick? And we'll see if I can find the... Okay, so it's a lengthy exchange of 2 minutes and 39 seconds, but the nut of it here is pulled out by Aaron Rupar. We'll just do it this way. So Kennedy, in his foghorn leghorn kind of a way, is asked. Well, he poses a hypothetical to Lutnick. Let me pocket it so that I can open it in the big computer, and then I can give you a sample of Kennedy's famous foghorn leghorn type drawl in asking Lutnick the question. And then you can hear also the excitement and frustration in Lutnick's voice in answering some of the questions here too. Let's got the volume up. All right, here we go. Oh, there he is.
If Vietnam, for example, came to you tomorrow and said, okay, Mr. Secretary, you win. We're going to remove all tariffs and all trade barriers.
All right. Pause just for a second, right? You see the setup. He's made it pretty clear, but I want to point out that he has said remove all tariffs and all trade barriers, right? So including the non-tariff trade barriers that Secretary Rollins said was essential, right? It's essential to impose our tariffs so that we can get other countries to remove all trade barriers, even non-tariff trade barriers, right? So Kennedy's question is, if Vietnam came to you and said, you win, we're going to remove all tariffs and all non-tariff trade barriers, what then?
Would the United States please do the same? Would you accept that deal?
Yeah. So that's the deal, right? If Vietnam came to you and said, you win, we're going to remove all trade barriers, tariff and otherwise, will you please do the same? Would you accept that deal, right? So what's the answer, right? Brooke Rollins tells you, well, yeah, it's essential for us to impose tariffs on these other countries in order to get them to remove their trade barriers, tariff and otherwise, right? Howard Lutnick, please answer the question. Would you accept the deal?
Would you accept that deal?
Absolutely not.
I'm sorry, what? Absolutely not.
Okay. Absolutely not. That would be the silliest thing we could do.
Why is that?
Yeah, good question. Brooke Rollins probably wants to know, have you contacted her about this? Absolutely not. That would be the silliest thing we can do. Well, Howard Lutnick is a financial genius and businessman. So what's the answer?
Vietnam has a $125 billion exports to us and imports from us $12.5 million.
So about $110 million trade deficit then with Vietnam. Okay.
And you're thinking, Vietnam exports $125 billion?
I'm aware of the figures, but tell me.
But where do they get it from? They buy $90 billion from China. then they mark it up and send it to us.
So they're
just a pathway of...
Now, I don't know that that's even true. But even if it were true, I'm not certain it would make a difference. But his accusation is well, it's an interesting thing you have to accuse Vietnam of, because right off the bat, I'll start by saying, yeah, we don't export a great deal to Vietnam. There's a small market, small country, much smaller population, and much less disposable income to use on expensive imports from the United States, whereas it's the opposite here. Larger population, more disposable income, and kind of all about imports. And, what can I tell you? That's just the way things go. It's not a tiny country, Vietnam. They have an enormous population for the size of the landmass, but we're 330 million. They're 100 million. So right off the bat, there's just 1/3 the number of people there at all. Not to mention, what's the disposable income distributed among the 100 million that they've got? Naturally, I think you would conclude, a normal person would conclude, that's going to mean a trade deficit. But that's okay, because a trade deficit means nothing. We also have, they have a population deficit with us, right? Does that mean we should send them, 150 million people and equalize the populations between our two countries? No. What? No. Well, same thing with the trade. Are we getting what we want for the money? Are they getting what they want for the money? There's no world in which economists actually think that there should be a zero trade balance between countries of vastly different sizes and vastly different wealth and vastly different needs. It's just not a metric. So I guess he has to come up in his own mind with some kind of weird justification for this. And the accusation then becomes, Vietnam doesn't make this stuff. They buy it from China and then they mark it up and send it to us. I'm not certain whether they do or not, but if they do, why? Well, one, what does it matter? And two, why are we buying from Vietnam then? Like, if you can get this stuff cheaper from China, why aren't you buying it from China? Well, it is possible that they're doing that now. If you have added a 30% tariff to China and only a 10% tariff on Vietnam, then if the Vietnamese are reshipping stuff, it's still, still got room to arbitrage that, I guess, and still buy it for less. But that can't historically have been the case, because the tariffs are new since last week. But listen, I guess Lutnick goes on and
China
says
to
more.
us.
You wouldn't accept that deal.
No, it's a terrible deal. We're the one with money. We're the one with the store. Of course they want us to take down.
So here again, this is just Lutnick being insane in his support of Trump. I have to sit there and say the stupid theory. There's no way a real business person has any belief in this theory that we're a store. We're like a giant, beautiful department store. We're the ones with money and the store. Yeah, we're the ones with money. We're the ones with disposable income. We're going to spend more. Like, I guess also, like, is there a trade deficit between vastly wealthy billionaires like Howard Lutnick, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and someone like me? Like, if I am, well, I was going to say, if you're working for Trump and he's paying you to do work, and then do you have a trade deficit with him? Does he have a trade deficit with you? You're not paying him very much money in order to work for him, but then he's probably not actually paying you. So that's a bad example. But yeah, a billionaire is going to just spend more money on luxury items because they can. And the people that they spend the money with aren't necessarily buying anything from their billionaire consumers, because, or maybe they are. That's how they got to be billionaires. I'm buying a Microsoft product for my computer, so I have no trade deficit with, what's his name, Bill Gates, something like that. But again, it's just a bogus theory of economics. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing. But it's amazing that Lutnick is sitting there using that stupid example in order to say, I'm defending Trump anyway. But this is Kennedy's question is, everybody else says the reason we have tariffs is to force the other countries to get rid of their tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So if they do it, will we have a deal? No. So what? So how are we going to reach a deal? Rollins is going to go to Italy to do a trade promotion thing, but is she going to work on any deals? How are you going to make 90 deals in 90 days if the other countries find out no matter what you do, we're not interested in dropping our tariffs? If you drop all your tariffs, we're not going to drop our tariffs because what about non-tariff trade barriers? All right, we'll drop our non-tariff trade barriers. Now do we have a deal? No. Why not? Because you're just buying stuff from China and marking it up and selling it to us. Am I selling it for less? I'm doing you a service. No. So there's really, I'm baffled as to what Lutnick thinks he's doing here.
Purpose of reciprocity then?
What's the purpose of reciprocity?
Not one of your goals? Are you telling the president that we shouldn't seek reciprocity? If that's what you're telling him, why are you trying to do these trade deals?
Good question.
What do we want? We want to encourage Vietnam to produce products they're great at producing.
But I want to get back to reciprocity. You just said you don't believe in you don't accept reciprocity as a goal. What are you negotiating in these trade deals?
Why would we open our bank account and their bank account?
Why are you negotiating trade deals?
Yeah. Why would you compare our bank account and their bank account when ours is 10 times bigger? Why do we care about that? That doesn't make any sense at all. And poor Kennedy, I don't care about Kennedy, but he's sitting there, asking the question. And ultimately, the question is, you say you're negotiating trade deals, and we're all supposed to sit here and wait for you to do that. What are you even asking for? You guys don't even know what you're asking for. You're asking for two completely different things, as between you and the Secretary of Agriculture, and I guess everybody else.
You're trying to get other countries to lower their tariffs and trade barriers in return for us lowering ours.
That's true for the things that they'll take from us. That's
called reciprocity.
Of course.
So are you or are you not seeking reciprocity in these trade deals?
We are absolutely seeking reciprocity with respect to things that can be reciprocal.
But you just said,
but when they're importing from China and sending it to us,
you just said that if a country came to you and offered you the ultimate reciprocity, no tariffs, no trade barriers, in return for us doing the same, you would reject that.
Of course, because they buy from China and send it to us. Don't you agree with me?
Suppose they said we won't buy from China.
Now we're talking. If it was Vietnam,
would you accept that deal?
We would consider it. For what?
Consider it.
For
what
products?
Would you want to change?
Well, there are certain products we want to reshore. We don't want other people making them. We want to make pharmaceuticals here. Right. We need to protect ourselves.
It's a very interesting exchange, to say the least. And I had to play all 2 minutes and 39 seconds eventually, all the way to get through to the end. And it's still the case. The Department of Commerce and the Secretary of Commerce don't really have a clear idea of what they want to get out of people. And I guess at the end, he sort of thinks he's struck upon something. He's got this accusation in mind that Vietnam buys from China and resells to the United States. And I'm not sure why that's a bad thing in general. If they're marking it up less than it would cost us to procure these things from China. If it costs us more than it costs us to procure them from China, then just buy them from China. And then Kennedy says, well, what if they lowered their trade barriers of all kinds, including saying we're no longer going to buy products from China and resell them, if that's even true? Well, now we're talking. Well, are we? Would you accept that deal? Well, we would consider that deal. That is not going to inspire a great deal of confidence for anybody. I have to come to the conclusion. In the end, the conclusion that you knew we were going to come to. No, they're not going to do 90 trade deals in 90 days. They're not going to do 2 trade deals in 90 days. Who would make a deal with somebody so unstable? And the answer I would guess is nobody. There's no point in doing it. All right, so that was more time than I thought I was going to spend on trade barriers, but I wanted to bring you that exchange because I thought that was kind of interesting. Now I want to go back for more Jeremy. Why? Well, why not? He often gives us some other insights into all sorts of things, but included among the many things is Idaho politics, for which we used to turn to Joan McCarter for these things, but then she moved to Oregon. So, she still knows this stuff innately, having grown up there. But it's been a while since we've spoken to her. So let's take our Idaho politics where we can get it. The other day, I read you the long and perhaps in the end, not that relevant story of Mike Boren and how he is going to be heading he's nominated to head the Forest Service, and that he was just basically a super jerk and is always at war with the Forest Service. And it's another one of those examples in the Trump administration and Republican administrations very often of late, including George W. Bush's administration, kind of operated this way. If you were at war with a federal bureau, agency, whatever, over your property or them regulating your business, and you would sometimes donate enough money so that when a Republican was in charge of filling out an administration, they would make you the head of the agency you're fighting with. And wow, all of a sudden, all of your disputes with the agency are resolved in your favor. How amazing is that? And the Trump administration has just exacerbated that. And so here we had seen this example in Mike Boren and read all about why he was fighting with the Forest Service. He has a big ranch in the middle of the Sawtooth National, is it a national forest? Yeah, that seems weird and incongruous, but as it turns out, you can have pockets of private land inside of national forest land. And I wonder whether maybe it might even be possible in national park land too, particularly if you're sort of grandfathered in. But anyway, the point is you can, in fact, own private property there. But that's not enough for Mike Boren, as we also learned in that article. Well, he owns certain private land inside the forest, but he also decided to build a cabin through one of his, subsidiary LLCs. We're going to build a cabin, but why build it on any of the land we already own? Why? There'll be a huge waste of open space on my property. Why don't I build the cabin on property I don't own and dare the Forest Service to throw me out of it? So what's going on here? Well, we read all sorts of things, and we also made some suppositions in reading this. I don't know anything really about the layout of things, but when he built the airstrip, for instance, that this was apparently in violation of the general principle of, okay, you can own private land in this area, but we want you to maintain it in a way that preserves the natural beauty of things and the undisturbed beauty of things. And an airstrip usually doesn't. So I thought, well, maybe I could say it's some remote areas. It's a ranch. Maybe he just is like, yeah, it's hard to get to. Well, Jeremy knows where the ranch is and where his brother's ranches are, and they're not hard to get to at all. And in fact, the living compound on the ranch is, right on the main road there, and a beautiful, well-paved, well-maintained road, maintained at state expense, federal expense, not their expense, right? Free. And still, he wants an airstrip anyway. So anyway, he had this to say. Since Central Idaho's sad saga with Michael and David Boren happened and is still happening, practically in my backyard, just 50 miles from where I live, I'll add a bit of local perspective to the story that you aired on Tuesday's show. Let's get it out. To begin, listeners should understand that the Boren brothers are even bigger a-holes than one might already believe. Vastly bigger. Just imagine what humankind's worst bullies, given tons of money and no concern for anything but self-interest, would be like. That's Michael and David Boren. We kind of gathered that. Each brother owns a ranch in the Sawtooth Valley, a.k.a. the Stanley Basin, which includes only the tiny towns of Sawtooth City, a.k.a. Smiley Creek, at the valley's upper end, and slightly larger Stanley, population 120 at the lower end. That's the slightly larger. The two towns, separated by 34 incredibly scenic miles, are nestled in a valley with the majestic and aptly named Sawtooth Mountains on the west edge and the White Cloud Mountains to the east. The valley floor itself is generally 2 to 3 miles wide and grazed by a federally limited number of cattle because the valley is within a designated national recreation area. Here are two more important criteria. The length of the Sawtooth Valley is traversed by Idaho Highway 75, a very good 2-lane paved road that is meticulously maintained year-round at our expense, and, well, Idahoans anyway. And both Sawtooth City and Stanley have public airstrips already. Michael Boren's ranch is just 12 miles from Sawtooth City, while his brother's ranch property, 22 miles down the road, abuts the Stanley airstrip. So I don't know what David is up to airstrip-wise, but Michael built his own airstrip in violation of all the rules, even though he's 12 miles from an airstrip. So if it was difficult to get to that area, you know, for a billionaire, you keep a car at the airport, you fly your private plane in, you drive 12 long, hard miles on a beautiful road to your own compound. No reason for it but personal avarice, I guess. David's ranch also abuts Highway 75. It is along this public-facing edge of his ranch on which the Forest Service has that easement and was building that public trail. It's right on the road. The ranch compound is several miles away and far out of sight, so it's not like he was seeing them building a trail outside of his windows. Michael's property also abuts Highway 75 and Hell-Roaring Creek, where the name comes from. His ranch compound is a quarter mile from Blacktop Road. Thus, although in the sparsely populated region, neither brother's ranch is remote or difficult to access. So basically, there's a little bit more to this, and maybe we can talk a little bit about it. But what's up here is basically out in, you know, for all the screaming they do about, I hate the big city, I want to move out and live on my own and, you know, out in the wild, away from the prying government. Anything the government wants to do is tyranny, right? We're building an airport, you know, already next to your house. Or we want to build a trail along the road because you've got an easement here. We have the right to do this. Tyranny! Can't have it. But for all of their screaming about wanting to live out in the independence and just, you know, be dependent on their own selves, right? They never have enough. Out in the, try that in a small town, right? In those small towns, there's always a boss hog figure who just can't get enough stealing off of the government coffers. That's what these guys seem to be about. Amazing.
You've been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
Anyway, we'll probably return to that theme, but that's what I wanted to have in mind with these guys. Think boss hog if you can't explain what's going on out there. And if you can't explain what's going on out in the world, you can turn to Justice Putnam. He'll do it for you. Next, right here on Netroots Radio with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Guess who else got into an exchange? Josh Hawley, schooled in his exchange, unlike Kennedy. See you tomorrow.